Listen, I have been a salvage runner for 300 cycles, and I thought I had seen every piece of worthless junk floating in the void. My name is Vorthack, and before you ask, yes, that means disappointment in ancient Zarathi. My parents had a sense of humor, or maybe they were just prophetic. The day everything changed started like any other miserable rotation aboard my ship, the Rust Bucket. And yes, that is its actual name. I am not being dramatic. Computer, scan Sector 79 Alpha for anything that might pay the fuel bills, I grumbled, nursing what passed for coffee in this corner of the galaxy. It tasted like engine coolant mixed with regret. Detecting anomalous energy signature, Captain Vorthack, the ship's AI responded in that annoyingly cheerful voice I had been meaning to reprogram for decades. Large metallic object, approximately 2.7 kilometers in length. I nearly choked on my synthetic beverage. 2.7 kilometers? That was either a derelict dreadnought or the galaxy's most expensive piece of space debris. Either way, it meant credits. The object materialized on my scanner, and I had to admit it was beautiful in that terrifying way that made your wallet sing and your survival instinct scream. The ship appeared to be of unknown origin, its hull composed of some kind of adaptive metal that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury, yet maintained perfect structural integrity. Well, I muttered, already calculating profit margins. What do we have here? As my ship approached, I could see the vessel more clearly. It was elegant, deadly, and completely silent. No life signs, no power readings, nothing. Just floating there like a very expensive corpse. The docking bay was massive, easily accommodating my modest salvage vessel. The moment I set foot inside, I knew this was not just another derelict. The walls hummed with dormant energy, and the architecture suggested a technology far beyond anything the known species had developed. Why breathing apparatus fogged slightly in the alien atmosphere. The air was breathable, according to my sensors, but I was not taking any chances. 3 centuries of salvage work had taught me that breathable and safe were two very different concepts. That is when I found the armory. The chamber was enormous, filled with row upon row of what could only be described as power armor. Each suit stood in its own containment field, pristine and waiting. But here's where things got interesting. Every single piece of armor looked different. Not just cosmetically different, but fundamentally, structurally different, as if each suit had been custom built for a specific species that I recognized some of the designs. There was definitely a suit built for Zarathi physiology, another that looked like it would fit a Colonian perfectly, and a third that seemed designed for those hulking Brutax warriors. But there were dozens of others I could not identify, representing species I had never encountered. Fascinating, I whispered, approaching the nearest suit. It was clearly designed for someone with my general body structure. As I moved closer, the containment field flickered and died. Well, that seemed like an invitation that I reached out to touch the armor, and the moment my clawed finger made contact with the surface, everything went sideways. The armor began to glow, pulsing with an inner light that made my optical sensors water. Then it spoke, not out loud, you understand. The voice appeared directly in my head, bypassing my auditory system entirely. And it was not happy. Species identified, Zarathi. Genetic markers analyzed. Combat potential insufficient. Moral fiber questionable. Personal hygiene adequate. Rejection confirmed. The armor powered down immediately, leaving me standing there feeling personally insulted by a piece of military equipment. Insufficient combat potential? I had survived 300 cycles of salvage running. That required more combat skills than most species possessed. Rude, I muttered, moving to the next suit. This one was clearly designed for Colonian anatomy, with extra limb attachments and elongated helmet structure. The moment I approached, it activated. Species identified, Zarathi. You are not Colonian. Access denied. Please find appropriate species-specific equipment or consider career change. Career change? This armor had attitude problems that I spent the next several hours moving from suit to suit, and each one rejected me with increasingly creative insults. One suggested I take up meditation. Another recommended a diet plan. A third offered to contact my next of kin. But here's where it got truly bizarre. None of the suits would activate for their intended species either. I had brought along a portable genetic scanner, and when I input the DNA profiles of various known species, the armors rejected them all. The Zarathi armor rejected actual Zarathi genetic codes. The Colonian suit turned down perfect Colonian matches. What is wrong with you people? I shouted at the unresponsive suits. You are armor. Your job is to be worn. Then I found a master control console. The interface was unlike anything I had ever seen, incorporating symbols and mathematical concepts that hurt to look at directly. But one section was clearly a species database, and scrolling through it made my blood run cold. Thousands of species. Tens of thousands. All categorized, analyzed, and apparently found wanting. Each entry contained detailed biological and psychological profiles, combat assessments, and a final judgment. Rejected. Every single one. Rejected. Computer, I called to my ship through the comm system. Run a deep scan on this vessel. I need to know what we are dealing with here. The response took longer than usual. When it came, my AI sounded confused, which was not a tone I was used to hearing from it. Captain, this vessel does not match any known technology in my databases. However, I am detecting quantum-level inscriptions throughout the hull structure. The text appears to be a manual. A manual for what? For something called the Universal Warrior Project. The inscriptions indicate this ship was designed to find and equip what they term the Worthy One with ultimate protective capabilities. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's atmospheric controls. How long has this ship been searching? Based on stellar drift patterns and quantum decay signatures. Approximately 50,000 standard cycles, Captain. 50,000 cycles. This ship had been drifting through space for 50,000 cycles, testing every species it encountered and finding them all lacking. The sheer scope of it was mind-bending. But wait, it got worse that I found a ship's log files, and reading them was like watching a very slow, very comprehensive galactic rejection letter. The ship had encountered the Zarathi at the height of our empire, tested our greatest warriors, and dismissed us as overly aggressive but lacking focus. The Colonians were intelligent but physically inadequate. The Brutax were strong but mentally limited. Species after species, civilization after civilization, all tested and found wanting by this mobile armory. The ship had been present during the rise and fall of empires I had only heard about in ancient historical texts, and then I found something that made my respiratory system shut down entirely at a recent log entry. Very recent. New species detected. Designation, human. Origin, third planet, Sol system. Preliminary scans indicate unusual potential. Adjusting course for intercept. The timestamp showed this entry was made just 2 cycles ago. I ran back to my ship faster than I had moved in decades, my salvage instincts screaming danger. Whatever this ship was looking for, it thought it might have found it in these humans. And if 50,000 cycles of searching had led to this moment, I definitely did not want to be around when the Universal Warrior Project finally found its match. But as I fired up my engines, a terrible thought occurred to me. What if the humans were not just another species to be tested and rejected? What if they were actually worthy? What if, after 50 millennia of searching, this ship had finally found what it was looking for? And more importantly, what exactly did the Universal Warrior Project plan to do once it found its chosen species? I set course for the nearest space station, my mind racing with possibilities. Behind me, the massive ship began to move, its dormant systems coming online after eons of waiting. Whatever was about to happen, the galaxy was not ready for it. But something told me the humans might be. The ship's hull began to glow as ancient engines awakened, and I swear I could hear something that sounded almost like anticipation. After 50,000 cycles of disappointment, the Universal Warrior Project was finally excited about something that scared me more than anything else I had encountered in 3 centuries of salvage running. Because when a ship full of universe-conquering battle armor gets excited about meeting a new species, it usually means someone is about to have a very bad day. And I had a sinking feeling that someone was going to be everyone except the humans. 3 cycles later, I was nursing another cup of synthetic disappointment at Kepler Station when the news feeds exploded with reports that made my scales itch with anxiety. Breaking. Unknown vessel appears in Sol system. Earth Defense Forces on high alert. First contact protocols activated as massive ship takes position near human homeworld. Experts baffled by technology that predates known galactic civilizations. I almost laughed. Experts baffled? They had no idea what they were dealing with. I did, and I was currently considering a career change to something safer, like juggling plasma grenades. The news coverage was typical galactic media nonsense, full of speculation and interviews with xenological specialists who clearly had never seen anything more exotic than a Terran house cat. But one detail caught my attention. The ship had not attacked. It was just waiting. That was not reassuring. When a 50,000-cycle-old warship decides to wait, it usually means it is planning something elaborate. I was 3 drinks into my retirement from Salvage running celebration when my comm unit chirped with an encrypted message. The sender ID made my blood freeze. Captain Marcus Webb, Human Defense Corps. How in the 17 hells did a human get my contact information? The message was brief. Vorthak, we know you boarded the vessel. We need to talk. Coordinates attached. Come alone. Well, that was ominous and impressive. These humans had managed to track me across 3 star systems and somehow knew exactly what I had discovered. Either they were very good at intelligence gathering, or they were very good at guessing. The coordinates led me to a small moon orbiting a gas giant in neutral space. As I approached, my sensors detected a single human vessel, sleek and purposeful. Nothing like the bulky warships other species favored. This looked like it had been designed by someone who understood that sometimes the best weapon was not being seen at all. The human who met me at the airlock was not what I expected. Captain Webb was average height for his species, with graying hair and the kind of calm expression that suggested he had seen enough action to know when to be worried and when to be terrified. Right now, he looked concerned, but not panicked. That probably meant he had not figured out the full implications yet. Captain Vorthak, he said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. Thank you for coming. I shook his hand, noting the firm grip and callous palms. This was not a desk warrior. How did you find me? We have been tracking that ship for longer than you might think, Webb replied, leading me through corridors that smelled of recycled air and human determination. Our deep space monitoring stations detected its quantum signature when it changed course toward Earth. When we ran the data backwards, we found it had made a stop. Your salvage ship was the only vessel in that sector. Clever. These humans were definitely not stupid. So, you know what it is? I asked. Webb paused at a sealed door. We know what it claims to be. The question is whether we believe it. The door opened, revealing a conference room where 3 other humans waited. I recognized the type immediately. Military strategists, the kind who spent their time planning for scenarios that kept normal people awake at night. Captain Vorthak, Webb said, meet General Patricia Hayes, Dr. James Morton, and Commander Lisa Park. They represent our response team for the situation. General Hayes was a compact woman with silver hair and eyes that had clearly seen too much. Dr. Morton looked like every scientist I had ever met, slightly disheveled and entirely too excited about potentially dangerous discoveries. Commander Park was young, sharp, and had the bearing of someone who could probably kill me with a spoon if necessary. Please sit, Hayes said. We need to understand exactly what you found aboard that vessel. For the next hour, I told them everything. The armory, the rejected species, the 50,000-cycle search, the quantum inscriptions. I watched their expressions change from professional interest to growing concern to what might have been described as controlled terror. 50,000 cycles, Dr. Morton whispered. That ship has been testing species since before human civilization existed, and it rejected all of them, Commander Park added. Until now. The question, General Hayes said slowly, is what happens if we pass the test? That was exactly the question I had been dreading. Based on what I saw, I think that ship is not just looking for warriors. It is looking for conquerors. The armor configurations, the weapon systems, the tactical databases. Everything about that vessel suggests it was designed to create an unstoppable military force. Or, Dr. Morton interjected, it was designed to find a species worthy of ultimate protection. Webb leaned forward. The ship has been in position for 72 hours. It has made no aggressive moves, sent no threatening communications. In fact, it has been completely silent except for one message. He activated a hologram projector, and suddenly the room filled with an image that made my breathing apparatus malfunction. It was one of the armor suits, but not like any I had seen before. This one was sleek, adaptable, clearly designed for human physiology. And it was beautiful in a way that suggested both protection and terrible, terrible power. The message was simple, Webb continued. It showed us this armor and transmitted coordinates for a meeting. A meeting? I squawked. You are not seriously considering going aboard that ship? We have to, General Hayes said firmly. If this vessel has been searching for 50 millennia, and it thinks we might be what it is looking for, we need to know why. The implications for humanity, for the galaxy, are too significant to ignore. Commander Park pulled up a tactical display. We have analyzed the ship's defensive capabilities. If it wanted to attack Earth, there would be nothing we could do to stop it. The fact that it is waiting suggests it genuinely wants our cooperation. Or, I said, it wants to make sure you are worth the trouble before it turns you into its personal army of galactic conquest. Dr. Morton laughed. Captain Vorthak, I think you might be underestimating humanity. We have been dealing with powerful technologies and moral dilemmas for centuries. We're not about to become anyone's puppet army. I stared at him. Doctor, the ship rejected species with millions of years of military experience. It dismissed civilizations that conquered entire star clusters. What makes you think humans are different? Because, General Hayes said quietly, we're the first species it has found in 50,000 cycles that it considers worth testing. That has to mean something. 3 days later, I found myself aboard my salvage ship, following a human diplomatic vessel toward the ancient warship. Because apparently, I had lost my mind somewhere between the third drink and the moment I agreed to serve as their cultural consultant for first contact with potentially universe-ending technology. The humans had insisted I come along, claiming my previous experience with the ship made me invaluable. I suspected they just wanted someone else around to blame if everything went horribly wrong. As we approached the massive vessel, I could see it had changed. The hull was brighter, more active, with energy patterns flowing across its surface like excited neural pathways. The ship was not just waiting anymore. It was preparing. Human vessel, you are cleared for docking bay 7, came a voice that I recognized. The ship's AI, the same one that had spent hours insulting my combat potential and personal hygiene. But now it sounded different, eager, almost hopeful. The docking procedure was flawless, the ancient mechanisms working with precision that would have impressed a Colonian engineer. As soon as the airlock sealed, Captain Webb turned to his team. Remember, we go in with open minds, but ready for anything. Dr. Morton, you take point on the technology assessments. Commander Park, security. I will handle communications. And me? I asked. You, Webb said with a grin that was probably meant to be reassuring, but mostly looked terrifying. Get to watch history being made. The armory had changed. The suits were now arranged differently, with one central platform elevated above the rest. And on that platform stood the armor I had seen in the hologram. Sleek, powerful, and undeniably designed for human use. As we approached, the ship's AI spoke, its voice now warm with something that might have been excitement. Species, human. Initial assessment, promising. Combat potential, moderate but adaptable. Intelligence, high. Creativity, exceptional. Moral flexibility, concerning but manageable. Most importantly, psychological profile indicates strong protective instincts combined with reluctance to use power for personal gain. The armor began to glow. 50,317 cycles of searching. 50,317 cycles of disappointment. Until now, Webb stepped forward. What exactly are you looking for? A species worthy of the ultimate responsibility, the AI replied. Not warriors, not conquerors, protectors, guardians. A people who would accept ultimate power and use it only when necessary, only to defend those who cannot defend themselves. Commander Park frowned. And you think humanity qualifies? Your species has something unique, the AI continued. You have the capability for great violence, yet you consistently choose restraint. You have the intelligence to dominate others, yet you seek cooperation. You have been given weapons that could destroy worlds, and instead of using them, you spend your energy trying to eliminate them. Dr. Morton was scanning the armor with every instrument he had. Technology here, it is beyond anything in our databases. This single suit could probably take on a fleet and win. Indeed, the AI agreed. And that is precisely why your species has been chosen. Because we believe you would never use such power unless the alternative was watching innocents suffer. I watched the humans exchange glances, and I could see the weight of the decision settling on them. This was not just about accepting advanced technology. This was about accepting responsibility for the galaxy itself. What happened to the species that built this ship? Webb asked quietly. The AI paused. They transcended physical existence approximately 51,000 cycles ago. But before they left, they created this vessel to find a species worthy of carrying on their mission, to serve as guardians of peace in a galaxy that tends toward chaos. And if we refuse, General Hayes asked, then the search continues. Though after 50 millennia, we are running out of species to test. Webb stepped closer to the armor. And if we accept, then humanity becomes the guardian species of this galaxy. Protectors of the weak, defenders against threats that single worlds cannot face alone. The armor will bond with chosen individuals, providing them with capabilities beyond imagining. But more importantly, it will serve as a constant reminder of the responsibility that comes with such power. I could see the humans struggling with the decision. The smart move would be to refuse. Ultimate power always came with ultimate consequences. But these humans, there was something in their expressions that suggested they were not thinking about what they could gain. They were thinking about what they could protect. We need time to consider, Webb said finally. Of course, the AI replied. But be aware that time may be limited. Our long-range sensors detect several emerging threats in nearby sectors. Wars brewing that could consume entire civilizations. Without guardians, many innocent species will not survive the coming conflicts. As we returned to our ships, I found myself in the unusual position of feeling sorry for humans. They had just been offered godlike power and the responsibility that came with it. Most species would have either seized the opportunity immediately or fled in terror. Humans, apparently, were going to think about it first. 2 days later, Captain Webb contacted me with their decision. We accept, he said simply, but with conditions. The armor chooses its wearers based on psychological profiles, not political appointments. No single nation controls this technology, and we maintain the right to refuse missions that we believe are morally questionable. And the ship agreed to this. I asked. Webb smiled. It said those conditions proved humanity was the right choice. 6 months later, I was back to running salvage operations when the news feeds exploded with reports of the Guardian Corps. Human warriors in incredible armor had appeared throughout the galaxy, stopping conflicts before they could escalate, protecting refugee convoys, standing between the strong and the weak. They had not conquered anyone. They had not established an empire. They had simply started helping. The armor, it turned out, had been right about humans. They were the first species in 50,000 cycles to accept ultimate power and use it responsibly, which, frankly, was both inspiring and slightly terrifying. Because if humans were the most responsible species the galaxy had to offer, the rest of us were in more trouble than I had thought. But at least we were in good hands. Even if those hands were attached to a species that had somehow managed to impress a 50,000-year-old artificial intelligence with their moral character. The galaxy, for the first time in millennia, had guardians again, and they were human. But the story does not end there. Oh no. Because the universe has a sense of humor, and that sense of humor, is usually at my expense point 3 standard cycles after the Guardian Core made their debut. I was minding my own business in the Outer Rim when my communication array lit up like a Colonian mating display. The message was marked with Guardian Core encryption, which should have been my first warning to delete it and pretend I had never existed. Instead, I opened it. Captain Vorthak, this is Guardian Prime Marcus Webb. We have a situation that requires your expertise. Emergency salvage operation. Payment will be substantial. Coordinates attached. Substantial payment from humans who now possess technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level. That was either the best opportunity of my career or the last mistake I would ever make. The coordinates led me to a system I had never heard of, which was saying something after 3 centuries of comprehensive galactic wandering. What I found there made me question every life choice that had led to this moment. Webb ship was there, along with 2 other Guardian vessels, all hovering around what appeared to be a massive space station. But not just any space station. This one was clearly of the same origin as the armor ship, with that distinctive flowing metal construction and energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Vorthak, Webb's voice crackled through the comm. Glad you could make it. We need someone with your particular skills. My particular skills being what exactly? Getting into situations that should have killed me decades ago. Your experience with ancient technology, and your talent for finding things that do not want to be found. The space station, it turned out, was another remnant of the predecessor civilization. But unlike the armor ship, this one was actively hostile. It had been attacking any vessel that came within scanning range, using weapons that existed in several dimensions simultaneously. The armor ship's AI believes this station contains critical information about other predecessor sites. Webb explained as I docked with his vessel. But every time we approach, it tries to erase us from existence. I found Webb in what humans called a ready room, suiting up in armor that made my salvage gear look like decorative jewelry. The Guardian armor was even more impressive up close, seamlessly integrating with his biology while providing protection that could probably survive a direct hit from a stellar detonation. So naturally, I said, "You want me to go over there and poke it with a stick until it stops trying to kill everyone?" More or less. Webb sealed his helmet, and his voice took on that slightly artificial quality of filtered communication. The station's defenses seemed to be automated, programmed to protect against specific types of intrusion. But they might not recognize a simple salvage operation. Simple salvage operation, I repeated. Right, because nothing involving predecessor technology has ever been simple. The approach to the station was surprisingly uneventful, which made me more nervous than if it had started shooting immediately. In my experience, when ancient alien technology was being polite, it was usually planning something unpleasant. The docking bay accepted my ship without incident, atmospheric seals engaging with the kind of precision that suggested the station's maintenance systems were still fully operational. The artificial gravity was comfortable, the air breathable, and the lighting adequate, all of which meant I was probably walking into a trap. The station's interior was different from the armor ship. Where that vessel had been focused on military applications, this place felt like a library. Vast halls filled with data storage devices, processing centers, and what appeared to be massive computational arrays. Guardian Prime, I transmitted, I think I found your information repository. This place is not a weapons platform. It is a database. A database of what? That was when I found the central processing chamber, and the answer became clear. The walls were covered with star maps, species profiles, technological assessments, and historical records spanning millions of cycles. This was not just a database. It was a comprehensive catalog of galactic civilization. It is a record keeper, I breathed. The predecessors were documenting everything. Every species, every technology, every significant event in galactic history. But as I moved deeper into the facility, I began to understand why it was so defensive. The records were not just historical documentation. They were predictions, models of galactic development, projections of species evolution, calculations of probable outcomes for entire civilizations. And the predictions were terrifying. According to the predecessor models, the galaxy was approaching a convergence point. Multiple species were developing technologies that would lead to either transcendence or extinction within the next few thousand cycles. The margin for error was essentially zero. Webb, I transmitted, my voice probably betraying more anxiety than I intended. You need to see this. The Guardian Prime materialized beside me in a flash of teleportation technology that still made my salvage runner instincts weep with envy. He studied the displays with the kind of focus that suggested he was already beginning to understand the implications. These are not just records, he said quietly. These are contingency plans. He was right. The deeper we went, the more obvious it became that the predecessors had not just cataloged galactic civilization. They had been actively managing it. Subtle interventions, technological nudges, carefully orchestrated first contacts, all designed to guide species development toward specific outcomes. They were gardeners, I realized. The entire galaxy was their garden, and they were carefully cultivating it. But why? Webb asked. What were they preparing for? The answer was in the deepest level of the facility, in a chamber that required both Guardian authorization and salvage expertise to access. What we found there made us both wish we had stayed home. .it was a war room, but not for any conventional conflict. The displays showed threats from outside the galaxy, entities that existed in dimensions parallel to our own, civilizations that had evolved beyond physical existence and viewed material species as obstacles to be removed. The predecessors had not transcended out of curiosity or enlightenment. They had transcended because it was the only way to fight threats that existed beyond physical reality. The armor ship, Webb said slowly, was not just looking for guardians of this galaxy. It was looking for a species capable of eventually joining the predecessors in a conflict that spans multiple dimensions. I felt my respiratory system doing things that were probably not medically advisable. You were telling me that humanity was chosen to eventually evolve beyond physical existence and fight interdimensional war. The alternative, Webb replied, studying readouts that made my mathematical processing centers ache, appears to be the complete elimination of all material life in this galactic cluster. That was when the station's AI finally decided to communicate with us. Unlike the armor ship's enthusiastic artificial intelligence, this one sounded tired. Ancient, resigned, guardian, salvage runner. You have accessed the final archive. You now understand the true scope of the predecessor mandate. How long do we have? Webb asked. The convergence calculations indicate first contact with extra-dimensional entities in approximately 5,000 standard cycles. Your species must achieve transcendence within that time frame, or the garden will be harvested. 5,000 cycles. That sounded like a long time, but according to the station's models, species transcendence required careful development over exactly that duration. There was no margin for error, no room for delays. What about the other species in the galaxy? I asked. The Zerathi, the Colonians, all the others. Some will achieve individual transcendence and join the conflict. Others will require protection during the transition period. A few may need to be managed if their development threatens the overall timeline. Webb and I exchanged glances. The weight of what we had discovered was settling in. Humanity had not just been chosen as galactic guardians. They had been selected as shepherds for the entire process of galactic evolution. The armor will help. The AI continued. Each suit contains not just protective technology, but educational protocols. The wearers will gradually be prepared for the responsibilities ahead. Their children will be born with enhanced capabilities. Their grandchildren will begin to show signs of dimensional awareness. And if humanity refuses this path, Webb asked, the AI paused, then the predecessors will be forced to implement more direct measures. The garden will be prepared for transcendence by any means necessary. We spent 6 more hours in that facility, downloading what information we could carry and trying to comprehend the scope of what humanity had inherited. By the time we returned to the Guardian ships, both Webb and I looked like we had aged several cycles. So, I said as we prepared to depart, How do you plan to explain to your species that they are destined to evolve beyond physical existence in order to fight an interdimensional war? Webb was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled that terrifying human smile again. Carefully, very carefully. 6 months later, the Guardian Corps had expanded to include cultural development advisors and evolutionary guidance specialists. Humanity was beginning the slow process of preparing their species for a destiny that spanned dimensions. And me? I finally took that early retirement I had been planning for decades. Because when you discover that the entire galaxy is essentially a managed ecosystem designed to produce interdimensional warriors, the smart move is to find a nice quiet asteroid somewhere and take up a hobby that does not involve ancient alien technology. But sometimes, late at night, I monitor the Guardian Corps communications and listen to reports of their activities. Humans spreading throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors but as teachers and protectors, guiding other species toward their own transcendence, preparing the entire galactic community for challenges that exist beyond normal space and time. That IT is terrifying and inspiring in equal measure. The predecessors had searched for 50,000 cycles to find a species capable of accepting that level of responsibility. And somehow, they had found it in a race of bipedal mammals from a small blue planet that had not even developed interstellar travel when the search began. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony that matched its sense of humor, and both were apparently at humanity's expense. But if anyone could handle the responsibility of shepherding galactic evolution while preparing for interdimensional warfare, it was probably the species that had managed to impress a 50,000-year-old artificial intelligence with their moral character. Even if that moral character was about to be tested on a scale that defied comprehension, the galaxy was in good hands. Even if those hands were about to be responsible for the transcendence of every thinking being in the local galactic clustered in oppression.